First is our special meeting, and the first item on the agenda is King Street parking designation. And Corey, that's...
Well, thank you, Mayor. If you remember, about 30 days ago, we had worked through some of the public comment where we had received concerns about updating the parking along the 100 block of East King Street. In the last meeting we had, there were still some concerns there from some of the residents, and I shared that we were waiting on the official plans from the Public Works Director, David Myers, for council's consideration, primarily because any parking changes do require council approval. And if we look back at what was there before, the parking included a loading area from where the buildings were formerly used for the Edenton carpet and appliance store, of which is no longer there. So the Public Works Director was able to send out a rendering of the updated parking plan, as well as the painting updates that they plan to do. That was included in the packet. And in order for us to modify those spaces, we will need council approval. So it is my recommendation, based on the design from the Public Works Director, that council consider approving the 100 block of East King Street parking designation.
And Corey, does that address some of the business owners' concerns and some of the public's concerns that they were voicing to us?
Yes, sir.
I got one more question. I think the park in front, the new parking in front of the courthouse always been no parking?
Yes.
Because people use that all the time for drop-off for events. I mean, I think we need to have some leniency there when people are putting on these big events and caterers come in, and because that's the way in.
Yes.
And I don't know if we have to call it a drop-off zone or something, but it just seems to be that that's something that people do all the time.
And we have used that space before for folks to bring things in for their planned events. But what we don't want during normal business hours just folks using those as normal spaces. So there is some leniency there when folks have that space reserved, and we coordinate that with the state sites to make sure that PD doesn't.
Because I mean, these historic buildings are fantastic. You know, I'm the biggest advocate, but they've got to work for modern life.
Yes,
So.
yes. And we will make those accommodations.
Would that be still labeled no parking?
And what we've done is we just paint the curb there instead of marking the streets.
Yellow?
Yep, we just yellow mark the curbs. This will correctly space 10 parking spaces, of which one will include the handicap space that was particularly requested at the curb cut.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next is a budget amendment for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
Thank you, Mayor, and the Finance Director, Virginia Smith. She's here with us. She's been working really hard to get the closeout budget amendments together, really to kind of rebalance anything from the expense standpoint to meet any of the LGC requirements. I noted in the memo that there were 3 primary budget amendments here to rebalance these. One totaling $58,000 within the police budget. Some of this was from the salaries and wages and overtime. As we increased the head counts for that department, we started getting more employees, of which more salaries and wages would be used, as well as some of the maintenance and repair items for the buildings, including the HVAC repairs and some of the camera surveillance repairs that was needed, as well as the third piece that contributed to that was the fuel and oil for that department. The second of which was $125,000 for the electric department. This is fund balance. Virginia and I went through this today again to really kind of iron that out. This was all primarily due to our purchase power pricing. We discussed that when we went through the fiscal 23-24 budget. This will correct any of the purchase power expenses that we had. And the last item to this budget amendment was for the airport fund. This was $50,250. $10,000 of this was recognized from the sale of the revenue. The remaining $40,000 was for overages in the fuel sales. If you sell more fuel, you got to buy more fuel, and so they net zero each other here. We are still waiting on the timber sales to finalize, so this is an initial projection. We may come back at a later date and actually completely itemize what the timber sale was for what we approved in June. Those are the three that are presented. Virginia and I have worked through most of this, try to understand what we need to avoid if anything is really a problem. Virginia, is there anything we've missed? And we do recommend that council approve the budget amendment to close out fiscal year 22/23.
Do we need to do each one of those separately?
Yes, we
Okay.
will.
The budget amendment then to end the year 22-23. I need a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, the next is the budget amendment for the airport hangar taxi lane grant. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, and then D is the motion amendment for DEQ Division Waste Management Grant for the recycling trailer. And Corey?
Again, so we received the award letter from the state for the $40,000 grant to help purchase the recycling trailer. The mayor's task force and Councilman Coleman and I have been working on this for quite some time. This will allow us to accept those funds from the state. We have included in the packet, we did include the quote that was received for the trailer. We're still anticipating a launch date for the recycling program in fall of this year. We'd like to go ahead and get the trailer here so we can get back acclimated to having that and getting these guys trained on moving the trash trailer and the recycling trailer around.
Corey, where will that be located?
It will be at Public Works.
Public Works,
Yeah.
behind the building or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so we'll stage it just like where we staged the recycling MRF's trailer when we
Okay.
subbed with them. But in the packet, this will allow us to go ahead and make this purchase. We need to go ahead and do this because this is a reimbursement style grant. We did plan for this fiscal year 23-24 the town funds that were set aside to make this purchase, but this will also allow us to go ahead and accept those funds after making the purchase from the state.
So we're going to go ahead and purchase the trailer?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir,
great.
we will.
Great.
And so we will need to take action on this tonight as well. This is for this current year.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions?
I'm glad to see it come.
Yeah. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And the next is the website domain change. And we got a form letter for that.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. So the document presented tonight, we've been working closely with the IT director, Cord Palmer, as well as the PIO for the town, to work through the process of switching the town of Edenton's townoфedentonnc.com website to the townoфedentonnc.gov. The current website will stay as is until we launch the new website, which is the next item, item F on the agenda to discuss. The IT director had pushed for us to do this. This is something that the state and federal agencies had been pushing all the local municipalities to go towards a .gov website. And the form that was presented in the packet will allow us to work with the VeriSign Incorporated group who manages all of those. and will allow us to make that change. And as we go through the website design and the launch of the new web link, that's when we will officially make that change. So up until the new website is finished, we will remain at the same website, and then we will try to at least have some kind of grace period where if you go to the old website, it will push you through to the new one going forward. But this form will allow us to make that designation change.
Corey, what's the timing on the new website?
Right now, if we get item F approved tonight, we can get that back to Civic Plus. I would say it would probably take anywhere from 90 to 120 days to get that completely redesigned. There's a lot of work. I know that's going to be a kind of a big project for Tyler to help us with. There'll be a lot of iterations and kind of back and forth drafts that we'll work through, but 3 to 4 months.
Is it one of those things where if people go to the website, it'll say website under construction, or we're going to always have a website and they're not going to bring the new one on until it's...
That's correct. They will always have a website to go to, and the new one will not launch until it's completely ready, and then that's when we'll make this designation change. But this letter will allow us to do that.
What changes do you see in this new website that we don't currently have?
There's quite a lot. Tyler, if you want to chime in on this, I know he's went through a lot of the scope of work, but it's really a really fresh update. There will be a lot simpler links to get certain forms. There'll be a lot of online availability to submit things digitally to us. We're hoping to include a resident concerns kind of Dropbox that will send things based on what was submitted from like a Google Maps of where a concern may be, and it will funnel that to the right people to make sure that the right people see that, so we can create those work orders, etc. Anything else from the website improvements?
I'd say it's pretty comprehensive. I mean, this is going to be a complete overhaul of the town's website. A lot of other local municipalities are doing this as well. So we're kind of coming up to that level. It's a complete sweeping change, but it's going to make things a lot easier for residents. All of our hyperlinks are going to be shorter. We're going to have more ease of access, handicap accessibility. Every department is going to have their own subpage, and everyone in town hall should be administrator on that page. So we'll have complete access to everything, including social media.
That's good.
It should be pretty nice once we finally launch.
And there are some peers that we'll be glad to share with council that are regional peers that we have that have worked with the Civic Plus folks to make some of these types of upgrades. And so if you want to see just some general ideas of what the format could look like, we'll be glad to send those
That'd be
out.
interesting to see.
Yeah. But we do need action on the domain change sheet and also the contract agreement, which we've kind of went through at this point, but there'll be 2 separate motions, Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Corey? If not, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
I think we need to make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a
I'm
motion.
sorry.
No, I'll make the motion
I'll second it.
on the first one
We
that
have a
we
motion and a second.
approve the domain name change.
I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself here. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, and we need the same thing on the contract agreement for the Civic Plus web design. So if there's no questions.
So moved, Mayor, on that.
Have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. And the next is an award letter for the waste treatment plant renovations Phase 1. Corey?
Mayor, I'm very excited to share this with you. So last week, we worked with the engineering firm on getting some of the final documents together with the contractor. If you remember back in January, we had received the bids January from 3 different contractors, of which we unofficially selected the Peters & White Construction Company. They were the lowest bidder on that day. Although the lowest bidder, there were some delays in the normal acceptance process. If you remember, the bids initially came in, the low bid came in at $13.3 million to do the project. This really kind of created two problems. One, the original lending packet was over for us, and we knew we needed to look back at the original scope of work and enter into negotiations with that contractor to try to see what we could and couldn't do without. We've had those discussions. We were able to negotiate this project down from $13.3 million to roughly $8.1 million. This pricing was included in the USDA lending packet that we approved on June 13th. The total funding amount for this project is $11.143 million, of which $5.955 million is loan and $5.188 is grant.
Corey, to get it down that $5 million, did Peters and White have to cut anything that we wanted to have?
So what we did is we went back through the original scope of work, and we went through the special order of consent with the state and identified which items from the project truly had to be completed and which ones were kind of accessory items to fix. The majority of the $4 million that was reduced in that was renegotiating with the state the type of land clearing that was there versus a logging operation, moving towards more of a forestry mulching operation. That was a huge dollar amount. It was about $4.3 million just for logging alone, and then also including the grading work as well as some of the silk fencing that was needed. We did suggest an alternative that would get the same results. The engineer confirmed that. We had those discussions with the state, and that was the initial renegotiation topics that were approached with Peters and White. And to give you just a little bit more of an update on this project, if you remember, we did approve the USDA funding packet on June 13th, and as of this afternoon, Virginia and I were able to work with the local government commission for the interim financing, of which that we were able to select Truist Bank to help us with the interim financing for the USDA loan, and we will be making a trip to Raleigh in August, on August 1st, for LGC approval of the USDA loan. And then the follow-up for council on August 8th, we will have all the lending documents from Truist for council's approval then. So it's a lot of moving pieces. We started out with a really big dollar amount. We're really nervous about how we proceed, but to negotiate the pricing down $4 million and then to look at the lending packet and get almost 50% of this $11 million project funded as 100% grant was quite the feat. Virginia and I have been working on this since January, and so it's major milestones, and we should know where we stand August 2nd, and then council would hopefully approve the Truist loan documents.
Corey, as it relates to the loan portion of that, at our August meeting, can you and you and Virginia provide us a year-end financial report that we request periodically as to our debt service and our general fund and how that stacks up with our internal policies and with LGC guidelines?
And do you want those to only include current debts, or do you want us to also include the interim financing as kind of a line item addition to show where we are now and where we will be in a year when this project is finalized?
Yeah, that would be a good presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we
If
can
y'all
do
can
that.
pull it together fairly easy.
Yeah.
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 And I just want to say, y'all hear this a lot. I've been on this for almost 25 years. And, we have been worried about the capacity since I got on this board. And I think this is just this is the kind of thing communities have to do to take care of the business. If you look around, the infrastructure's falling apart in most of these small towns. And ours is sound, and this is going to make it even more sound. So I think this is it's the kind of stuff nobody wants to spend money on. I think a lot of other towns don't have. So, bravo.
Thank you.
And spending the money before it gets in total disarray saves a lot of money. And $4 million, I think, is quite a savings.
And Corey, have we worked with this company before?
We have not. We have
Yeah.
not worked with them. They did come highly recommended from the engineering firm that we work with.
Okay.
They've had some projects with these guys before.
Where are they from, do you know?
They're from the Chesapeake area.
Okay.
And so we do, so tonight, action that's needed is contingent on LGC approval for the funding packet. Council needs to tentatively approve Peters and White
Do-
as the contract.
Do you see any problem with LGC? I mean, with, okay.
Not at this time.
Okay.
We've satisfied every request that they've had. We've been on the phone with our bond counsel this afternoon up until 4:45, ironing out a couple of things that they've needed. So we should be in good standing for the August 1st approval from LGC. So the motion will need to be contingent on
Contingent.
LGC approval.
I move that we tentatively award the project to Peters and White Construction Company, subject to LGC approval in August.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So you're free to go to the meeting on August the 1st.
Wonderful.
All right, now we're going to give you a little bit of a rest, and we'll pick on Dwayne for boards and commission reappointments, and we'll call on Dwayne for that.
Yes, sir. So every year go through the boards and commissions and see who needs to be reappointed. So this year we had 4 that are for reappointment. I've made contact with each of those individuals, and they would like to stay on those boards for their respective terms. Preservation Commission, being reappointed Tom Newton for a 3rd term. Board of Adjustments, reappointment of John Sands for a 2nd term. And Tree Committee, the reappointment of Dr. Helen Kalodny and Rick Nicara. So those are the 4 reappointments.
Dwayne, do you have people waiting to get on any of these boards right now?
We are seeking applicants as we speak. We have, I have a list in my office of what boards we need to fill. I feel like there's Tree Committee and Preservation Commission are full, but Board of Adjustments and the Planning Board, I believe there's 3 or 4 vacancies between those 2 boards.
Okay.
How do we advertise those vacancies?
Try to push it through social media. I think that's what we're going to try and do. I think we just did that, if I'm not mistaken. We have it online on the website. Talk to anybody, just word of mouth kind of thing. But that's
And they're also published in,
Yeah.
yes.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in,
Well, I got one quick thing.
okay.
I wonder if we need to start working on a code of conduct for, everything that happens, so that, so that things, I know people can get really worked up, and that's different than being, sort of, there's a line you cross. This stuff's really important to people, but I wonder if there's some type of way, we can come with other countries, I think have done it, there's a code of conduct when you present yourself to us, and we have to certainly abide by it.
Yeah.
And all the people that are on these boards have to abide by it too. And I just wonder if we could sort of look into that.
It's a good suggestion.
Yeah, for the applicants.
For that, for everybody. I mean, I think that.
Does that also include,
The way, it's like, like how can I go to court? We have to act a certain way. And I think that it's important that everybody, acts with respect towards the boards, and the boards act.
Actually, presenters should be professional
Yeah,
100% of the time, yeah.
And I'm sure that's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
I think that's completely reasonable, and we will try to look at some of maybe the larger municipalities that we have contacts with to see what their code of conduct is, because it's oftentimes assumed, but,
And just show respect for the
What-
board you're speaking to. And that seems to be an issue.
The people that are on the boards have to,
Yeah,
you know,
same thing.
abide also.
Right, same thing.
And Councilman Dixon, would that include guidelines on how citizens should route complaints and the proper chain of
That'd be
command?
great. Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, hearing that, any other questions or comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion to reappoint these appointees.
So moved. I think we already did that. Yeah, I second, yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And that ends our special meeting, and now we'll go into our committee meetings. And the first one on the list is the Administrative Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman High.
Thank you, Mayor Stallings. We are, of course, at committee meeting stage of this, and so for the general public, there will not be a vote on that at night, and we're still in the discussion stage, both informally outside of formal meeting and also formally tonight at our committee meeting. The recent brief history of the social district, you will recall that at our June 26th meeting, we voted to table the social district ordinance. And we did that for several reasons. One, we had one of our members absent. And by the way, we're glad that you're back and back in the saddle, or at least back in that seat again. And we're glad you're on the mend. We also had, prior to the 26th, taken some surveys of our citizens as to the possibility of a social district. We had also invited the public to come make comments at that meeting on the social district. And we felt at that time that there were too many questions for us to push that for our July meeting for a full vote. And we felt like it would be a good exercise for us to continue talking about it and trying to kind of tweak it to the point where we might be able to get a vote on it. In general, it seemed that council is generally in favor of such a district, but there were a lot of questions. It seemed to be, in general, based on the surveys and public comment, that a majority of the people were in favor of it. Some of those who were opposed had some concerns that we wanted to address, and some of those that were in favor of it still had some concerns that they wanted us to address. So we felt like it would be best for us to give it a full discussion. That discussion is ongoing. As a part of that discussion, Councilman Coleman and I met with Assistant Town Manager Dwayne Wilton and also Town Manager Corey Gooden. And the concerns that many of us had heard from the general public, just to summarize a few of those, I received a number of comments from the public that they wish that we would take it slower and smaller and to see how a smaller and slower approach would work. We heard some concerns about the geography of it, where it was actually going to be, the number of days that it would be in effect, and also the hours that it would be in effect. One proposal coming out of that meeting was to reduce the times to Thursday and Friday from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. The original proposal, Corey, was for 7 days a week. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what were the original proposals on the Thursday and Friday times and the Saturday and Sunday times?
All 7 days were from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay. So we had discussed reducing it from 7 days to Thursday through Sunday, and instead of just a blanket 11 to 9, we had discussed Saturday and Sunday 11 to 9, and also Thursday and Friday 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. There was also concerns as far as the geography. The three main areas that we heard the most concern about was the Courthouse Green, Sunfish Park, and the Barker House green space. And one proposal coming out of our meeting at this time would be to hold off on any inclusion of Sunfish Park, the Barker House green space, and the Courthouse Green. One thing that would be important for the proponents of those areas would be We're going to monitor it to see if there are any problems. And for the opponents of such a social district, we're going to monitor it to see if there are any problems. And whatever we would do in August or later, we're going to be flexible. We're going to give us the right to go in and change things, to do away with it, to improve it, anything along those lines based on what we are seeing on the ground. There were also some other recommendations coming out of that meeting, and one would be to increase the font size from 12-point font to 16-point font. The slogan or the statement, drink responsibly and be 21, so that will be increased. And also, when we get signage to indicate the boundaries of the social district, we had talked about incorporating Edenton Recycles into the district signage. So those are where that's where we are now. What I would propose tonight is among council members, if any of you have any concerns about the district as originally proposed or about some of those proposals that we just talked about, let's voice those now and continue to talk about it, and perhaps we can be in a position to take some sort of vote at our August meeting.
Well, you know, one thing, I've been thinking about this a lot, because I mean, the last thing we want to become is Bourbon Street.
You're right.
But I mean, that's the very last thing, I want
Yep.
to see this precious little town. But I wonder if we could just do this, like, have it sunset at the end of a year, and then we reevaluate it and say, did it work? You know, is it an experiment that works? Or, because, you know, I know that the Main Street crowd is really pushing this as a way to revitalize downtown, and I totally support that effort. And a lot of really progressive towns are doing it. But, you know, if we come up with our rules and our boundaries, and then we try it for a year, and then it sunsets, so that, you know, it just goes away, and if it doesn't work, we just let it go away. And if we have a lot of complaints, then we let it go away at that point. You know, don't renew it. 'Cause
Are we looking about coming back to this in 6 months? Revisit this?
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 months.
We could put a sunset at 12 months, but also a review time within 6 months. Say, for example, if it's just a complete disaster and we review it in 6 months, we can clean that up in time for next spring and summer season when a lot of our people are out and when we have a lot of tourists here. By the same token, if it's really, really working, a 6-month review period could get us in good shape for the same reason, the spring and summer season to add to it.
Personally, I'd like to see us start small. I'm really more for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, not so much Thursday. But I understand Thursday we have a lot of tourists coming in the evening hours, and so I'll go along with Thursday.
Hi, I've been confronted by a lot of people, all walks of life. And what they're saying is that we used to have a saying in Edenton, nowhere else but Edenton, and why is Edenton now is trying to be like your larger cities. We've had tourists come to Edenton for years and was happy with Edenton. Their thing is, why on Sunday? That's the Lord's say. If you can't drink and do all you want between Monday and Saturday, why you gonna do it on Sunday? The other thing is that we still got kids walking up and down the street, and we can have these people out here more than ever now. We've got them out here now, and kids gonna be seeing this. What impression are we gonna give to our youngsters?
Well, I think those are valid points. Coincidentally, Friday afternoon, I met with a representative of the Chamber of Commerce in Washington, and they instituted theirs in the spring, and they said that without hesitation that there had been no problems, no incidents, and that even the people that were originally against it have recognized that nothing bad came of it. Now, each town is different, and I think that's why if we do it, as Councilman Miller said, let's start small, and also let's do it, as Councilman Dixon said, where it just fades away into the sunset. If it doesn't work, you know, after 12 months, it's gone. and also to build in there a 6-month review period. If it's not working, like Councilman Dixon said, I certainly do not want Edenton to become a Bourbon Street. Yeah, I don't think it will, but if it does,
If it's not helping those merchants, then.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, that's the whole reason. Yeah, that's the whole reason
And
we're
one
doing
thing
this.
that I think we do need to make a point of, another push for this has come from our young people, and we need to say loud and clear, okay, you're going to show us that you can do this responsibly. If you can't, we're going to yank it right out from under you. We're listening to you. You say you want it, but if you go out there and start playing the fool, we're not going to have any part of it.
Dwayne, did you check other municipalities? How were they doing?
Yeah, I've spoken to, I don't even know how many, I think there's 40 in the state, if not more now, that was back in March. 0 incidences, and this is coming from college towns as big as Greensboro to the smallest, I think,
But isn't it,
Wood or something like that, you know, like there's smaller municipalities out there that have done it too. It's more of a economic driver, a community involvement, you know, people involved in the civil shops.
Are they saying business has picked up because of?
Most of it is, like me and Corey, we went looked at Greenville, they drew their social districts, what appeared to us was around their vacant buildings to generate foot traffic, to hopefully entice businesses to come to the area. So, I mean, restaurants, you know, social atmospheres, just something like that to generate more foot traffic in the area for the retail businesses that were scattered along inside of it. That was really the idea behind it. You know, anything that pops up from this still has to have town council approval. You know, any businesses generated, you know, out of this, if it doesn't fit the permitted uses. So there is a mechanism of control there as well. And once again, it was built in to have sort of that sunset feel that if it doesn't work, it goes away. If it does work, we expand to the areas that, or you could expand to the areas that, you know, was previously thought that we were gonna have. So, it was based primarily off of recommendations from, the Retail Merchants Association, other municipalities that have had it, so, and purely for economic development, generate foot traffic downtown, different things like that. So that's kind of why we decided to try and implement it.
In the way the ordinance and the management plan are set up now, if council decides that sunset isn't happening quick enough, there is mechanisms built into the ordinance and the management plan to stop it. I mean, we could simply do an emergency meeting if something were to get to that point and void what was there.
Without waiting for the 12-month sunset
Yes.
period.
Yeah.
So if it's a complete disaster.
Yes.
but in all these cities and towns that it's been tried in, are they like Edenton? Is it one main street? Because most of the cities that I go into, it's on a side street where you got most of your restaurants and your bars at. We just have one main street, which we're gonna occupy with tables and alcohol.
A lot of main streets are very different. There is a few out there that are set up similar to Edenton. I cannot think of them off the top of my head, but I can get you, I think I had that in the PowerPoint presentation, that was.
Like Blowing Rock or Apex or?
Yeah, they're going away from it right now.
Yeah.
I know there's very some, there's municipalities that have less population than we have that have implemented this.
I know New Bern had a problem because they couldn't, it was hard to isolate the commercial part from the housing.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
are different than most
Yeah.
places, in that we have a very succinct
Commercial area.
commercial district.
Right.
And to your point, Councilman Bond, a lot of the locations that we did look at, the restaurants and entertainment businesses were rather dense. They were consolidated into smaller areas. What makes Edenton unique is we have quite a spread in where our business footprint is. You don't see restaurants beside restaurants beside restaurants. We don't have that luxury where it would be smaller. And for us, We did try to gauge the businesses that were interested in taking part in this, and you know, it's a shame that more of those, you know, places to eat or places to stop and have a drink aren't closer together, and that's.
But still, restaurants are gonna be the only ones that can do this, right? That can serve the alcohol and all this stuff?
If a business were to be established here and choose to get their own ABC license, they could have a retail store and serve glasses of wine.
Like Surf, Wind and Fire.
Yeah, similar to Surf, Wind and Fire.
Some kind of beer.
Yeah, and so any space could choose to go down that route.
But what I'm saying, no furniture store or drug store, which we got downtown here, is gonna be selling alcohol or beer.
So
So when you say the
Right.
foot traffic brings in prosperity, what's going, because those folks gonna be out there socializing and drinking. So who's gonna be in these stores buying stuff? How is it gonna enhance their profit?
What are the retailers saying? Not the restaurants, not the ones that sell alcohol. What are the other retailers saying? Hey, this is a good idea or it's not?
I think the hours that we set, 5 to 9, it's after normal business hours. The furniture store, I think, closed at 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And some of the other stores also close around that time, so it's not interfering with their business. That's why I was against the 11 o'clock. I thought that was way too early. Anything after, normal business hours, I felt like was appropriate.
But what the question that I'm asking, maybe I didn't ask it right. How can a furniture store business enhance from people on the streets drinking? How can a drugstore business enhance from people out on the street drinking and socializing? A hardware store?
Well, I
A
can see
jewelry shop.
I can see a furniture store. You go in there with your wife, and you got a drink in your hand. She wants to buy a new chair, and you're on your second drink, and she's going to say, and you're feeling pretty good. So, oh, honey, you just go ahead and get it.
There you go, Craig. I like that.
That's a good. That's a
I mean,
good
that's
thought,
what's
though,
gonna
but
happen.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I think the point of it is to bring more people down, and then they shop. I think that's you just get a larger group of people in.
Have you been downtown Edenton on a Friday and a Saturday? You can't even walk down the street now.
Especially Saturday morning.
And for us, we
right.
would like to encourage some of those vacant spaces to become some type of new retailer where folks are coming by, or potentially a smaller restaurateur or a small place that maybe sells wines, similar to what Malcolm's does here now. And it's really to try to encourage any of those unoccupied buildings to become occupied.
So you think by us selling alcohol on the street, it's gonna force somebody to come in and open up one of those buildings?
Well, and
There's several businesses that we know, I mean, we've talked with one who, based on the reason why they would want to come here.
Okay. See, these questions that's being asked to me, and so I'm asking them to
good.
y'all.
It's good.
Yeah, they're all good questions.
Good questions.
Corey, I don't want to rush this thing through, and I don't think we're doing that. I think what we're doing is looking at it from all angles and trying to listen to concerns. Does it put staff in a bind or in a rush if we continue to have this conversation leading into the August meeting? I talked with Councilman Costin about this earlier today. It seems like there's a yes vote and there's a no vote, but in between that, there's a lot of concerns here. And one councilman, like Councilman Costin, says, "Well, I don't like the 11 o'clock." Somebody else may say, "I do like the 11 o'clock." And what Councilman Costin and I talked about is break down the components that we've had the most discussion on, and just kind of find out, hey, Councilman Costin, what do you think about the length of time or the number of days or the geographic district, and just continue talking to see if there's any agreement on those components, and then if there's any agreement on the social district itself, thumbs up or thumbs down. But I think there's still so many concerns out there that we're not close to even having a yes or no vote. And it may be we just continue those discussions and fashion something hopefully for a vote in August. But like I said, I'm not in favor of us rushing anything. If we come up in August and we're still working on it, we'll just keep on working.
Does anyone oppose a special meeting specifically for this and maybe open it up one more time for public comments?
I think we could have a second public hearing at our August meeting, and for us, it doesn't delay anything from the administration's standpoint as far as getting this out. I mean, we don't have it now, so 30 more days of discussion and public engagement is completely appropriate because we haven't lost anything at this point. I mean, it wasn't there, and we still don't have it, so we're still at the same place, but it will not delay us. Most of the revisions are fairly simple for the ordinance and the management plan. Anything that we revise or draft to even consider for a vote, it's not going to impact us at all. So if that's what the administrative committee is interested in doing, is potentially going forward with another public hearing to get more folks in and to make any more revisions, that's completely appropriate.
And I mean, I could see us putting down something that's like pros and cons. So let's say, the 11 o'clock hour, we get more people into town. But the con is, do we want people drinking at 11 o'clock on, bars they work?
Yeah, no, I get it.
I mean, I think that's a pro and a con that'd be a good thing to put as a point to try to figure out, I mean, our goal is to help downtown and not kill the golden goose at the same time. So, I mean, I think we need to really, I think this is a really hard thing for a municipality to do.
And I agree.
Yeah, and I think it's hard enough that, again, I'm not in any rush. I'm fine with us compiling more information and a list of pros and cons of each of the components of the ordinance and just continue working on it and continue listening to the concerns.
And I think there's a big split in town that we get a lot of feedback from our tourists that nothing goes on Sunday. But our faith-based community really cherishes that time to take a day off and have it with your family and, worship in a way you want to worship. I think they're completely different. I think, I think Elton, I agree. I think that it's something we really need to make sure we're doing the right thing on.
Yep, I agree. So with that, we don't really have a recommendation other than just tell you and the general public we're going to keep on studying it. We're not going we're going to listen to the people and
It's your
continue working
committee.
on it.
Perfectly fine.
Thank you, Mayor. So that concludes my report, Mayor Salas.
Okay. So we don't need to take action on
No
it
action,
tonight? Okay. All right. We'll continue studying on that and trying to figure out which way to go with it. The next is our Utilities Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Bond.
Thank you, Mayor. The Electric and Water Utilities Customer Service Policy Review, we went back over it, and the policy was reviewed to make a necessary revision to help provide clarity for customers and to assist them in protecting the finance of the town. It was determined that the administration would review the policy annually to make sure any revisions remain. The question that came to us was the disconnection fee, $25 and a 5% late and a $75 disconnect fee. Corey, you did a little bit more studying on this. I'm going to turn that section over to you.
All right, and we did go through this about a year ago, and at that point we did say that we would revisit this customer service policy to try to figure out if there was any things that council was not satisfied with. And what Councilman Bond had indicated is we do have and this was established, a 5% late penalty when folks have not paid by the 3rd of each month at 5 p.m. Those do not show up until the 4th, that first morning. There's also a $25 non-payment fee, which occurs around the 10th of the month. And then when disconnected, there is also a $75 disconnect fee for non-payment. one of the things that was asked of us is to look back at the financials of each of these, and particularly show the dollar amounts that each of these equate to. I did bring a handout. I apologize for not including that in the packet for the rates from January through June of this last fiscal year. What this shows is all three penalties broken out with the 5% at top and the dollar amount it equates to each month. Below that is the $25 non-payment fee broken out by each month. And then the bottom line of that is the $75 disconnect fee. What this shows is that the $25 fee since January represents roughly $18,275 over the last 6 months in revenue for the water and electric fund. When that equates to about $3,000 a month or $36,000 annually. One of the things for council to consider if they were to choose to remove this fee, really two things here. This penalty would, removing this penalty would represent a reduction in late payment fees of roughly 25.8%. Currently, these funds are considered when determining each year's fiscal year revenue projections. And if council did decide to remove this $25 fee, it would very likely shift to the rate structure to assist with any of the purchase power pricing. It's completely up to council to choose if we would like 2 fees rather than 3 fees. Virginia's here with us to try to help answer any logistical questions. One thing also to note when we talk about the second impact we would see from this, if we were to choose to do this from an operational standpoint, I would stop the door hanger, which is typically what is seen on this $25 date, that 10th date. That's when those door hangers get out. And
Door hanger says, what does it say?
for the non-payment
Okay.
for electric, and the reason to share that is because this fee takes into account what the finance agent, finance director and her girls do there for generating the list, cleaning that up, getting that list to the electric department, and then getting those meter readers out to physically place those door hangers. So if we choose to remove that, a lot of customers kind of use that as their third reminder for non-payment. That would go away, and we would strictly keep a 5% penalty on the third, and then it would be up to the customer's responsibility to have that reminder separate from the calls that may have been received up until the point of getting that disconnect fee. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
During this period of time, did we ever stop putting up the door hangers? I remember you and I had a discussion that we stopped actually hanging the door hangers at some point.
There has been some for repeat offenders that are on this list, month in and month out. Any new customers that had gotten to that point, or anomalies that wasn't repetitive, would still get those door hangers. So most of the repeat offenders, we had stopped.
But essentially,
putting
they're
those out.
still being assessed a $25 fee, is that right?
Yes.
The repeat offenders, they just can't afford it when it comes up, or is it more of a household budgeting item? Because they pretty much guarantee, you pretty much know what you're going to have to pay in electricity and water per month.
Like, my concern was, like I said at the last meeting, was that we've got a lot of elderly people that are fighting to
Maintain.
buy groceries, pay insurance and all this stuff, plus rent. Sometimes they might be a little later than the third getting it in, and for them to have to pay a fee on top of that, it's gonna be a little rough. And I think Virginia the last time was telling me about a program that you've got here, and I've told some people about that program. I don't know whether you've seen anyone come in or not.
I'm not privy to that. Just sent over to Ricky, usually handles those applications. For privacy issues.
Corey, I think. I think at the last meeting I brought it up and said maybe we can have Tyler draft something. Have we been working on that at all? good.
Yeah, we have, and we're trying to get something out to share the payment options as well as the budget billing program, which will allow folks to have a more equal payment each month before those true-up months. So, you know, months when things typically may have been lower for that homeowner, they may see a rise, and in those months where things have been higher for that homeowner, they may see a decrease because you try to target what their previous 12-month average was and average that payment going forward.
You're already doing that, aren't you? I thought you.
There
yeah,
is a
but-
budget billing plan,
Yeah.
and I think that
Yeah.
we would be glad to work with any customers around getting that. That is definitely a preferred option for folks that may be on a fixed income to set that way they can plan accordingly for that.
And just to follow up, I had somebody come to my office the other day, and I don't think people realize this. You have two people that work in manufacturing jobs their whole life, you know. So then the husband dies, they made about the same thing. The government just cuts off the husband's Social Security. If he made more,
She can get that.
then she would get the extra.
That's
But
it.
if they made about the same thing, you're taking a household that's living on two incomes, and the government comes in and basically takes it from those people. And so you got a widow left with one Social Security, and we got to have, as a community, I think for those people that have always paid their, I mean, we need something to help. I mean, I know this is program, but maybe we can learn more about it, how that helps, because I think that we have a moral duty to help that person as a community.
You know, I think, at one time, we had this round up your bill to the nearest dollar or something, and that went into a fund. I don't know if that still is active or not.
It's still active. That money is sent to the county DSS office for their LEAP program.
Okay.
So they allocate that money to people that are in need if they meet the qualifications.
But they
So
can
is
only,
it
they can
any
only
way
do
that-
so much of an allocation, though. They've got a ceiling, don't they? DSS?
There are qualifications, pretty much income-based. But yeah, we do
Yeah.
not allocate that money ourselves.
Right.
It's all done through the LEAP program.
I really wish we can figure out a way to handle that out on our own, because essentially,
Get them to come make a presentation.
right,
Let's hear about it.
because essentially those funds could be going to Chowan County's water department. It could be going towards Dominion Power because they all service Chowan County.
Typically don't have that much in funds. It might average $250 a month. It's not anything astronomical by any stretch. And it's just easier for it to go through the LEAP program because of well, now you've got somebody that's got to go through applications. They got to, okay, does this person meet the guidelines for eligibility? What are the guidelines for eligibility? So the state already has that in place through this program, so it's just easier for us to send that money directly to DSS for them to handle that way.
And maybe in that same literature that Tyler's drafting, we could have him include something about the Roundup
Yeah.
program to get
Yeah,
more
it
people
sounds
involved.
like-
It'd be great to have them come present to us and say, this is, you know, here's what I do with this person that doesn't have enough money to pay the bill.
Yeah, I'd like to have that presentation.
Corey, have you heard from St. Vincent de Paul yet?
I have not.
Okay. That's another presentation.
Yeah.
that-
Well, it sounds to me like we need to do a better job of promoting all these different programs that we've talked about. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know anything about the budget billing until last meeting, so I went and signed up for that after the last meeting. But we are acting surprised at some of the programs that are out there, and so I can only imagine that the general public might be undereducated about what we offer. We need to do a better job of letting everyone know.
Dorikia comes from DSS. This is something that she used to do as part of her job over there. So she's very familiar with the guidelines and how those programs work, as well as additional programs that the customers might qualify for. So when someone comes in and they are asking for assistance, she's a really good resource. So if you have anybody in your district that needs help, send them to her, because she can certainly point them in the right direction to getting the help that they
What's that name again? Would you repeat?
need. Dorikia?
Her last name? Yeah.
Perry. And we do have a lot of options for our customers as far as payment. Particularly for us, we do go through multiple iterations of calls, and when we go from the 31st to the 1st or the 1st to the 3rd before we assess that penalty, one of the things that we've been getting the ladies up front to really take care of is multiple iterations of those calls, and that's really helping you say, well, what does that mean? From this last list I can think of for the month of July, for your June bill, we went from a list of 400 and some folks between the 1st and the 3rd up until us purposely delaying cutoffs because of the heat index and delaying that down all the way to a list of 20 when we talk about the cutoff, or 28, excuse me, on a Friday. We chose still not to cut off that long weekend because of the temperatures. We roll around till Monday. We're down to 8 residents that have not paid. I mean, so we truly try to work with folks, of which those 8 we had to cut off, and then that same day, 6 of those 8 come and paid that specific day. So we literally got down from a list of 5,000 customers down to 2 people mid-month that didn't have power on because of non-payment. So, I mean, Dorikia and Ophelia and Jessica really flood those calls. We're trying to figure out if we can do daily calls to get to that point, to try to whittle that list down.
Yeah.
But when you talk about 5,000 customers getting to the 17th of the month and only have 2 that have power, not have power for 24 hours, which we still sent someone to that house to try to figure out what was going on. We really do try to work with folks.
It's good to hear.
Well, I think another education piece was somebody comes knocking on your door from the electrical department. We're not necessarily there to be a bad guy, but try to find out what's going on and let you know that there's ways that we can help you.
That's the only drawback to the telephone system, the automatic call, is that if the phone number is not accurate, because they've changed numbers or they don't have a number, they don't receive that call. So that was the plus for the door hangers, is that it's physically gonna go on the door, so they're gonna see it. Whereas the phone call, they may or may not be it.
Because my concern was with the season and our elderly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scared to cut on the air conditioning because you don't want to get a high electric bill. You're in the house suffering.
And then you got food to put on the table, you got drugs to buy. Where are you going to put your priority?
And we continue to push that cutoff date back from our original schedule to try to get past those really hot days.
Sounds like y'all are doing a good job.
And it's one of those things we'll be glad to put together an option of all payment options, including the budget billing, what programs are out there. If we can get DSS in here to come and share with us that for public information.
Well, I think we can get a hold of Sherry Blunt. She's the interim DSS director, and she could ask Ms. Perry to come in and give a presentation.
And I don't think that's unreasonable for us to
No.
set that up. And we'll continue to flood the social media pages to try to push that forward. That was the one thing still in question tonight, was that $25 fee. So however council decides to move forward as far as taking action to remove that or not taking action to remove that, that will be up to council.
Well, official action would be in August, though.
It would be at our next meeting, yes.
Right.
Personally, I'm very much in favor of getting rid of it. I'm the one to kind of push for that. I think the 5% is sufficient, along with the $75 reconnection fee. To me, it's just a way that we're generating revenue off of someone's financial hardship, and I'm not in favor of that. But I think the 5% is suffice, along with the $75 reconnection fee.
Well, I'm going to give it some more thought, Councilman Costin. I think I told you that earlier today. And as many times the case, I can see both sides of it. I really can. To Councilman Costin's point, I can wrap my head around a late fee. We're all used to late fees very easily. And I can wrap my head around a reconnection fee because of everything that goes into having to do that. I can wrap my head around that. fairly easily. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head over a non-payment fee that's in between those two things. Same time, when we start talking about revenue reduction, I like to have a plan for revenue replacement at the same time before you reduce that. So I see both sides, and I'll continue to think about it and maybe ask some more questions about revenue replacement if that's the way that council goes. But
Can we just table this conversation for right now and
Yep.
visit it
Absolutely.
next month?
Yes.
Come
Yeah.
back to it?
Yes.
Do you think we can get somebody here from DSS to give a little presentation too?
I'll try to have that set up for the August meeting to go through some of the payment options that are out there.
Okay.
And maybe the correct option for us, if folks are struggling between the 3rd and roughly the 15th to make that payment, I mean, one thing to consider, if we're trying to work with people to get to the point of disconnection and physically going out there and disconnecting that meter, charging them that fee and then reconnecting, the correct move may be to actually increase the disconnect fee if we chose to move that, because we shouldn't subsidize the rates for the electric charges to change that increase. It should still somehow remain within the fee structure if we choose to remove that $36,000 a year from the fee structure. That person that's not paying that payment and physically being disconnected should be the individual that's responsible for those dollars, not the folks who are trying to get to that point of the month to make their payment, even if it's 4 days late, versus the entire customer base being impacted by that. So that is an
What
option.
about increasing the time period for payment? Is
I
that-
thought we did that. I thought we pushed it back. I remember Councilman Coleman and I had a meeting with, I think it was you and Jessica, and I thought we agreed that we were going to push it back from the 3rd to the 5th before the first fee was assessed.
So the 5% penalty is assessed after close of business on the 3rd, and from everything we had discussions from with the residents, was those individuals had their checks by the 3rd of the month for payment. And so we can revisit that 5th. All that does is shorten the window for us. When are the bills received to the customers from the previous month? What date? So if we sent out July's bill, when did they receive that?
They should typically be received around the 11th or 12th of the month.
Of June, right? Of the previous month.
So when she billed in July, it was for June usage, and they should have received it in their mailbox roughly around the 11th or 12th of the month.
And so the penalty doesn't take effect for the late payment until the 3rd of the following month.
For the following month.
So they've had 3 weeks to plan for that payment and acknowledge from the initial receipt. So I don't know if the 3rd or the 5th gives us much difference.
If they have an online account, it's as soon as she posts the bills. So all of the fees and the cutoffs are driven around the readings and the billing cycles. It has to go in a certain order, and it has to be within a certain number of days, or you're not, or the customer's not gonna receive their bill by the 11th or 12th. It might be the 15th or later. The further you push the billing back, the later the bill's gonna get to the customer. So that's why we have to stay on target. And you have to stay within that time frame when you actually disconnect someone, because once they're disconnected, their account goes in an inactive status. And if it's not reconnected before she does the next billing cycle, then their account is closed. So they would have to start the process all over again of applying for service and all of that. So then at that point, they would have to pay the past due and current and the fees to get service back. So that's even more of a hardship.
And for us, this is why we've continued to, this year in this 23-24 fiscal year, we've pushed the electric department to move towards the automatic meters, similar to what we're doing with the water system, to really free up those physical time requirements that are needed for us to get everything paid to move towards the next reading batch so we can start billing you for the July month if you got your June bill. So for us, every day that we push that any further back is that many more days that the meter readers have lost to physically read for the next bill. And so that's the kind of balance on
Would the
that.
cost to do that for our electrical meters be roughly the same as a water meter, or it would be
No.
substantially more?
Substantially higher.
Thought
And
so.
so we're looking at a pilot program for that, to test that out, that is budgeted for this year. And there was some cushion built into that if we really like it, to try to get as many meters as we know on that program to free up those reading dates. But it's substantially higher than the water meters.
And from an internal perspective among staff, the new water meters have been received favorably, is that correct?
Yes.
And the only unfavorable thing I think I've heard from the general public is some people said they thought their water bill was higher, and that was just all due to a function of this new system was more reliable and more accurate than the old system.
Yes. We went from a mechanically driven brass water meter to ultrasonic sonar, which is super sensitive.
Yeah, and other than that concern for the general public, we haven't received any real negative reactions, have we?
No, and we're able to look back 3 to 6 months at the time and work through billing questions to show if there are problems. We can almost identify what the leak internally, or if it's something on the outside, may be just by flow rates.
And those reports are reviewed every day by staff, and if they see that a customer has abnormal usage that isn't there normally, then they will call that customer right away, and they'll be like, we've noticed on the report that you've had this high usage and during this time frame, but they can even pinpoint the exact hour of the day that the water is being used, and that way they can go ahead and get a plumber to come out and check and make sure that there's nothing going on.
And if you take the plumber's bill back to the office, there'll be an adjustment done.
That is
Yeah.
correct.
It's good to hear.
But tabling this will not impact us at all if we would like to have that discussion in August with a representative from DSS to explain some of those programs, as well as our staff to show what all of our billing options are. I think educating the general public is the key to this. And I think there is some balance from what Councilman High has recommended as far as some of the timing. But looking at this from both sides, rate adjustments versus penalties, responsibility falls into certain.
So we're all in agreement that we're going to table this for the moment, right?
Sounds like it, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
All right, and that concludes our agenda for the night, and we're going to go into closed session to discuss a personnel matter. So I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we go into closed session, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are in closed session. We'll ask the public if you will